morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Enterprise AI Show. This is your host, Aaron Delp. And first of all, it's good to be back. And today, we are going to be talking about behavioral agent automation platforms, or BAAPs for short. This is a new industry term, and seen it with kind of the rise of agentic AI, and it's a topic we wanted to dig into. Now, quick programming note, you may have noticed we didn't have an interview on Wednesday. We actually had to move that to today due to some technical difficulties. That technical difficulty, by the way, was I lost power when a car hit a power pole at the entrance to my neighborhood. So Brian had to jump in. We did some fast publishing. Everyone is fine. Power is back on, and we are back on track. So with that out of the way, we are going to move on to our topic of BAAPs, and we're going to do that right after the break.
Today's show is sponsored by ShareGate. You're out of time. Copilot needs to be deployed ASAP, but your tenant really isn't ready for it. Years of data, permissions, and users lurk in its shadows, ready to be exposed by AI. ShareGate Protect sees it all, so you can find the exposure risks, fix them fast, and deploy AI with confidence. Microsoft 365 Governance, they've got this. Learn more at sharegate.com/protect. Today's show is sponsored by Nasuni. There's a growing gap in AI right now between what's possible in theory and what successfully works at scale inside an enterprise. The difference comes down to unstructured file data. Many AI initiatives struggle because the file data they depend on is scattered, unstructured, and disconnected from where and how work actually happens. Nasuni changes that. It brings your unstructured file data into a single, secure foundation so AI, both generative and agentic, can access it with the context, governance, and performance it needs in production. Bring AI to where your unstructured data lives. See what it takes to activate your data for AI and request a demo at nasuni.com/AI.
And we're back. And, oh, by the way, for those of you that don't know, this is Aaron, because I'm not even sure the last time I've recorded an episode. It's been, probably 3 months or so since I've done an interview episode. Thanks to Brian for taking over and manning the ship for a little bit while I had to go do the day job and focus on that for a little bit. But we have a special guest today, and it's a special guest that I actually get to give some shit to on a regular basis here because he is a very good friend, and I'm sure we'll get into that as well. So with that out of the way, we have Stephen Walchek, CEO at Liminal AI. So Stephen, first of all, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Man, so good. And what a pleasure to be here, and a totally full circle moment for us, Aaron. We were just reminiscing off the call here just about how we worked together, and it was 13 years ago, and I was a kid when we first met at SolidFire. But how times have changed and how we've grown up. It's been really fun to catch up, and what a blast to be on your podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to let everyone know, like, to give you an idea, like I'm not comfortable calling you Stephen. Like, you're Walchek to me, man.
That's fine. You know. Call that for the rest of the podcast. That works. I go by both, so that's good.
There you go. Give everyone a quick introduction of like your background, right? Like, I mean, you've had some exits already kind of under your belt, and you've been kind of building over there for a couple of years now. So give everyone before we jump into Liminal specifically, give everyone some background, man.
I think I'm an idiot a little bit. I'm a guy who serially thinks he can go and do something that he probably doesn't have any business doing. And I've been doing that for a long time. I started my first company at 19. It was an online platform for banks to trade whole loan debt called Debt Market. We sold that to Intercontinental Exchange about 7 years later for no profit whatsoever. But our investors got their money back. And I think that's at least a marker, some sort of a feather in our cap. But I went from there to another startup called Inktank. We sold that to Red Hat, which of course is now IBM. And I led global business development there. I led global business development at another storage startup after that called SolidFire, which is where I got to meet yours truly, Aaron. And we got to work together there, and it was really fun and enjoyable, and so many great stories. And I think it's one of my favorite work cultures of all time. I can fondly reflect on the team that you and I were a part of, and just think about how much value we were able to create on that team, how fun it was to be able to learn from each other what a cool moment for us. I went from there to AWS. I led technology partnerships and then global go-to-market around emerging technology there. And then I went and became a weird orthogonal move to a fintech company called FIS, about 75,000 person financial services company. And I was a chief innovation officer there, and I led a startup incubator. We launched 5 companies out of that, saw a couple acquisitions, left there to start Liminal, in which we can dip into at any point or not. We can talk about the AI space. This isn't meant to be an ad for my company. I'm far much more talk about what you're seeing and I'm seeing. I mean, you've got such an interesting role now too.
Yes.
But yeah, that's kind of where we went. So I've been a part of really incredible teams. I've been able to assemble my own incredible teams as well. And now I, decided to take a giant pay cut, much to the chagrin of my family. And here we are trying to dig ourselves out of that hole.
Yeah. I mean, hey, so like we were commiserating about that before we hit record. I mean, we're 2 guys that took pay cuts to go do startups. You just happen to be the founder. But so there is a topic for today, though, and that topic really is, and it's actually something we've never really dug into a whole lot before, and it is security for AI. But more specifically, I want to get started into this horizontal security for generative AI, right? And so the whole idea there is like, okay, security that's targeting regulated industries, right? Like insurance, financial services, healthcare, right? And what was that core problem? Because you have to remember too, like we always forget this. You founded this company in what, 2022, 2023? Like OpenAI was just coming on the scene.
Yeah.
Like LLMs wasn't necessarily a thing yet. And so like we always refer to anybody who started a company pre-OpenAI as like OG AI companies. So I'm going to put you barely into that category, right?
Barely.
Like what's the core problem? Tell us a little bit about like your thought process back then. And then the follow-on question I'm going to add right away is how did it change in the last year?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, actually. Like the idea migrated like 3 or 4 times before we landed on one. And it was because we started to talk to a lot of customers about it. I had the good fortune of joining a venture studio that was around at the time, no longer exists today, called High Alpha. And I had an idea early on to want to simplify API connectors into, any AI on behalf of enterprises. It was a problem that was being solved by a couple others, but I didn't think it was simple enough. And, I believed that AI was going to scale to the place that it was going to be today. Totally ended up not being the company we started. That was something called FinSpace that we decided not to do after talking to a few customers. And this problem kept coming up over and over as we talked to more and more customers in regulated spaces. And it was, hey, I'm just afraid of my data privacy. Like, what are they going to do with my data? And at the time, there was a bunch of these large companies who were seeing their users engage with GPT-3 and then seeing their data come out in the subsequent model as they were training that, using that user-based data, training it back into the models. The most famous of these is a Samsung chip that they were designing using GPT-3. And if you can recall the story, it's ancient at this point, but they were so nervous that their IP had actually made it into the model because their users were using the free accounts to engage with it. Okay. So data privacy became this big theme around using AI. How do I keep my data out of models? And if you kind of look at regulated industries, think like banks, financial services, insurance, life sciences, healthcare, state, local government, education, federal, defense contractors, none of them want their data moving into these models. And yet if you look at the data agreements across all of these models, they're not friendly if you're using the kind of free or even the low tier model or low tier licenses from them.
Well, and I'll jump in real quick there and say, and you look at Fable 5, it's forced now, whether you're paying or not, right? And so new era, new rules. But anyway, keep going. I just wanted to throw that in as well.
So much about this, right? Like you're building like such a really cool, like large enterprises are leaning into where Mistral's headed, which is driving a lot of around the open source modeling. And how do I enable that how do I enable my company to own my AI? And there's a lot of value to that. However, if you kind of tap down market, like don't think large enterprise, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we got there. So the problem being data privacy, and then security based around observability. How do I understand what's happening? How my users are engaging with models, and then administration and governance. How do I actually enforce policy across all of these different models that are going to be deployed in my organization. So break security into those 4 things: data privacy, observability, governance, administration. That's kind of the security challenge that we have. Well, we said all of this is going to get built into applications, so let's do that at the application layer, which turned out to be a dumb idea, but it was the idea we had at the beginning. And we booked a couple really big clients. We booked like Eli Lilly as a customer. We booked IU Health as a customer, squarely in that ICP that we were serving, a large enterprise. We couldn't book anymore after that. Like, it became really difficult for us to book other customers after them. And they wanted us to take a directive for them. They had a lot of product suggestions they wanted to make, and we just couldn't find expansion within that opportunity set. But the problem still remained. We just had to figure out who was experiencing that problem with the most pain and then do something about it differently. And what we found, it was December of 24, and we said to each other, if we don't change, we're going to die. And as my co-founder, myself, our chief business officer, and our chief marketing officer, we sat together in a room and we said, if we don't change, we're going to die. So what are we going to do? And we said, listen, if we were to move down market slightly, so think mid-market companies, employee size 500 to 5,000, they don't have the same security teams that can go and operate separate platforms from the actual generative AI engagement tools at the time. Now, of course, AI engagement tools, no one uses generative anymore. That just shows you how aged I am in the AI space now. But they had nothing around that. And so you'd have to operate a separate security layer on top of that. And people didn't want to do that. They wanted it all integrated. I want my security next to my end user tooling. So that's what we did. We took all of the security platform we built for enforcing data privacy, for observability, for governance administration. We combined it with a delightful end user experience that was multi-model, flexible, provided unlimited access to the latest and greatest models from the top 5 providers, but also supported 425,000 different LLMs, SLMs, as delivered across a variety of different providers, all through that same end user interface that was completely governed and controlled by an organization. And we started to win at that point. And we started targeting mid-market, still regulated enterprises. And it's gone incredibly well for us. We raised another round of funding. We've done really well, but the problem still persists. The fears that people have, data privacy still is a big deal. And I can give you a bunch of different reasons why that exists. We don't have to go there, but if you want, I can. OpenAI last year getting sued by the federal government, or sued by the New York Times, the federal government, then requiring them to maintain and retain all logs of data running through their API and through their end user tools. So now you've got all the enterprise data contained in one place. 1,400 breaches across the top 5 model providers happened last year. I mean, right away, you're like, if you're retaining data, then it's subject to breach. Then, of course, whoever wants to get access to it is typically able to get access to it. And that's people's most closely guarded secrets. Same thing, Anthropic changed their terms of service last year. I just found out, actually, if you want ZDR, zero data retention, with them, you have to spend over $100,000 a year.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know how few people are doing that? And so what does that mean? Well, it means companies kind of fall into this dichotomy of either I'm going to have an open license policy, bring whatever you want, which is, I know it's dangerous. We came from the cloud years. You don't want that. You don't want people they don't just swipe in the credit card and setting up their info however they want. And of course, that's not secure or safe in any way, shape, or form. Or you're in the other camp where you go, well, I'm just not allowing AI into my organization. Well, okay, good luck. There's over 1.1 billion users of just OpenAI's tools, let alone all the others right now. There's no way that this stuff is not being used by your workers. Yeah. So how do you find that middle ground where I can securely provide them AI and access to it with all of the controls and data privacy around it, but also that doesn't dent the end user experience and gives them access to tools? So that's what Liminal is today. I know there's a long explanation to a really short question. You can edit that however you want to shorten it up. But I want to give you all that context because I think it's important to learn as the market shifts.
So it's funny. Longtime listeners will know this. Other than some ums and some ahs, we don't edit this show, man. That's all going in, cool. Just so you know. So but let me ask you this, because okay, I'm going to put on my architect hat for a second here. When we say okay, horizontal security, let me pick at that a little bit. You've got the LLMs, and then you've got the LLMs is going to have some guardrails around it, right? And then you're going to have I don't know, in these days, agentic harnesses and, kind of some wrappers and all of this other things like that. Where does this sit, if I use that term, right? Is this inline? Is it next to it? Tell me a little bit about like peel back that next layer. What
Yeah.
is it? What how does it actually implement without going too far into the weeds, right?
No. Let's keep it high level. How do you engage with AI when you're building something? Do you use it within a particular framework or harness of your own, or do you use Cloud Code?
Yeah, and I think the answer is today a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
Like increasingly, I think it's so. This is actually a really great topic. So the customers I talk to, it's increasingly both, and here's why. Yes, the ones that are specifically bought into one, maybe they're using that harness to get those specific advantages of, but more and more what we're seeing is I want to be able to not get locked in, right? And so that not locked in piece means I need to have maybe a harness, but it's almost like my harness are an independent solution so that I can switch horses.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
Because right? Look, Codex isn't anywhere near Fable, right?
Yeah.
So if you're using an independent harness and you were using Codex before, but now you see the capability of Fable, like I can tell you right now, my experience of just using Opus to Fable is like Opus struggled with a ton of infra work I wanted it to do. Fable did it one shot in like 15 minutes. I walked away, I came back, it set up my entire AWS stack through CLI. It was unbelievable. It was like, what? I've been struggling for 5 or 6 days to get Opus to even do a part of this. Codex is kind of another leap behind that. Now I know they'll catch back up, and I'm not trying to bash OpenAI for a second, but you're categorically right. Now, I'm talking to the technical user, you. The vast majority of end users don't live anywhere near that degree of technical. In fact, I would be willing to bet that the people that are listening to this podcast probably are almost all power users of generative AI or AI. However, if you look at the like 80 to 90% of the workforce in like non-tech companies, they are still very new to these tools. That's who we serve. So you're going to be really security conscious. You're going to need a tool that costs you $250 a month. And you're going to want to have even like that's for Cloud Code or Cloud Max. You're going to get less use through the API. But if you have some open capability there, then like maybe you're hosting your own Mistral model locally, of course, I'm sure. Whatever that looks like, that's you are an advanced user of generative AI for the vast majority. And I mean that the vast majority of the workforce, they're nowhere near that. And they're nowhere near the security consciousness of a technical user. They just want to use AI to help them create better content, to help them do better analysis, to automate some function of their job. And most of them are not builders. So what do you provide them? You're not going to pay $250 a month. You don't even want to pay $60 a month for these end users. You want to pay something that you can know that you're securing that data from the top level. So I'm securing it with data privacy. I'm able to obfuscate data that's moving through that I don't want being pushed out to the end model. I'm able to have observability in between. So I can track what are people saying, and I have an audit capability, and then we can talk about what those logs actually can do long-term from an agentic perspective. And then you have the administration and governance. So if you're a CIO or a CISO inside of these organizations, you have the ability to set policy, who gets access to what model and what they can do with that model internally. That's what Liminal does. So that security layer exists, but then we also provide the other side of that equation, which is how the end users actually engage with that Gen AI. So you can think of us as like perplexity plus security stack, all built into one platform.
Nice.
And at a price point for them that makes sense. I can deploy this to that 90% of my user group without needing to think about token costs or limits or data privacy. Oh, by the way, all deployed single tenant. So everything is maintained as an extension of the network boundary. So that's where Liminal lives. Now, you like horizontal security for all Gen AI, by the way, was like our earliest kind of tagline before we migrated into who we are today. But that's okay. I still think that's necessary, though. I think when you talk about horizontal, you have to look at the network layer. If you're operating outside of the network layer, whatever. It's a very different security story. So we are great at securing the vast majority of interactions that occur through a chat and voice interface. When it comes to applications that are leveraging Gen AI in any capacity, that's basically everybody. You're going to want to have some network layer security, and we work really neatly with the network layer providers like a Prompt or an AIM or some of these other folks that are, they're all now sold to whatever Sentinel-1 and Palo and all the others out there.
Right. So let me ask you this, because I think what you're getting at too is, because everything needs a category and every category needs a name, right? Is this where like the behavioral agent automation platforms?
Oh boy.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but you don't have to necessarily answer that.
You call it BAAP,
BAAP.
it's not a
So
mouthful.
so we'll call it BAPs. But the idea here's where I want to go with that. We've talked to many security companies over the years, and then we've talked to a bunch of folks in the industry. The single biggest problem I see is like, okay, how do you pitch this to the CISO? Especially if, like, okay, you're a startup, you're in a new area, that new area is risky, then you're in this, I'm going to call it the BAP category. You're in the BAP category on top of it. Like, if I'm a CISO, all I see is layers of risk upon layers of risk, right? And so, like, how, like, reverse it for a second. Like, if you're a CISO, A, what's your objections? And B, like, how do we get around those objections?
Yeah, look, I think the objection as a CISO that I don't know if we face this as much as we kind of tuck in underneath this objection is that I have, every app has AI in it. How am I securing that broadly? And you're then saying, well, you've got to operate a network tool, and there are people who are allowing you to do that. However, packet interception is a kind of known low capability to do data privacy enforcement. You've kind of got to do it at the application layer. So how do you make sure that what tool are you directing the vast majority of your users to engage with from, like, an AI chat that's integrated to your backend data sources, either by MCP or directly through enterprise search, the APIs? Where are you directing people to engage with AI specifically for doing kind of the general purpose work? Because that's the crawl stage, right? The walk stage beyond that is the agentic stuff, and we can talk more about how we fit into that category. But from the crawl phase, like, where's that initial chat interaction and that voice interaction taking place? And that's in a platform of your choice. So you can choose a single model provider platform, but you're going to be now setting data privacy restrictions at the network layer, at the EDR layer, which we, again, there's a bunch of ways both around that and through it, versus doing it in the application itself where people are used to engaging. That's where we live, right? We live in that. We are that chat interface, that voice interface that people use to engage with AI, to engage with all of their corporate data. But we have that additional security platform built into that. So it's specifically enforcing data privacy with 99% efficacy at the term level before it ever reaches a model inside of your tenant. So it's never ever leaving your network boundary. It doesn't rely upon packet interception, pull apart, do something, reassemble, push to go and actually do something. And it's not crucially beating up the end user for trying to do their job. And so many of these platforms will be like, go edit your prompt and go do something differently. And people go, no, like, not even. I'm going to go use my phone because I'm not getting slapped for this. People aren't watching me. I'm going to go do this thing over here. Versus Liminal, actually, we do something kind of 3 stages. We go, hey, we've detected a non-compliant term. We underline it something like Grammarly would or any of your other applications. So we just say, hey, we've detected a non-compliant data type here. We don't tell them we're doing anything with it. We just underline it. According to the policy set by the administrators on that particular model, we then, when they hit enter, we de-identify that prompt, any data attached to that prompt, any data coming in from the outside. And then we send it down to the model of that user's choice. Well, upon reception back from that model, what we're doing is we're actually rehydrating that non-compliant data back in. So, like, instead of getting a bunch of dear redacted, thank you for redacted, and therefore redacted, which is useless, the end user is getting an output that they would expect because we're pushing that non-compliant data back and we hold on and cache those terms for as long as the duration of that prompt exists. That's really freaking cool because a user doesn't get beat up for using the tool as it was intended. It's really difficult to do that at the network layer, like really annoying and really difficult. And we work really nicely along the suite. So what we tell those CISOs is they object and they say, hey, like, we need something that can, look up here across all of our applications saying, well, where are you directing the majority of your AI traffic? Where are these people going to live when they're trying to do general purpose AI work? Are they going to live in Copilot or Claude or something else? And they go, no, we don't have a tool that we've selected yet. Great. Like, that's good news for us. Let me tell you about what we do. And then you can talk about how this works with your overall security strategy. And then they go, cool, I can get all of the things I need, data privacy, observability, governance, administration across a core tool that's going to fit across 90% of my workforce. And then I can figure out the smaller parts for the majority of my workforce where they're going to engage with a tool like you mentioned, some sort of a harness that allows me to do multi-model interaction to select down the one that I like best or host it locally and be able to use that. I see a lot of folks heading that direction right now. And as they should, by the way, for a whole bunch of different reasons, cost being the biggest one. But there's all sorts of security reasons as well. Anyways, okay.
Yeah.
Once again, a long answer to a reasonably short question, but context matters.
Yeah. Let me ask you the maybe the logical follow-up to that from the crawl to the walk stage. In addition to this, the biggest problem I'm seeing is yes, okay, everything you talked about is like, okay, user and user interaction directly. But we have to move up to the agentic layer or the agentic phase, if you will, of like, okay, I have agents doing one or two things, or I might have doing something quickly, but then you move into the realm of agent swarms and you start to move into agents that aren't even necessarily in-house. Maybe they're out in the cloud doing something completely off-prem, coming back. Like, how do you start to secure something when A, there's not necessarily a user to secure, and B, there's not necessarily a perimeter to secure?
Yeah. Well, I would say policy is always the first point. If you've got developers in your company that are letting agents loose without perimeters, you've got a whole lack of policy or people are totally not following it, which then says, how do I enforce policy? I enforce it with observability. So observability is critical there.
Yeah.
You need to be able to understand what agents exist, who's using them, how they're deploying them, and what perimeters they have. So I completely agree with your statement, by the way. I'm not the anti-agent guy. I'm the kind of like, hey, security's been done in layers for as long as security's been around. And it starts with effective policy, it middles with training, and it ends with technology. That's the three kind of layers that you think about when you're enforcing any security stack. You cannot dismiss any one of those, particularly in the world of AI. You need effective policy, you need effective training, you need effective technology that helps you do things like observability. For us, when we think about the agentic wave, I don't think about the U's of the world who are going to be building really neat tools with agents, like that are going to be deploying agentic swarms. Because I can promise you, inside of an insurance company, there are not many U's. There are a lot of folks that are call center operators, that are, analysts, that are actuaries, that are people who are not building tools using AI, regardless of how easy it is. That is not their core skill set. And so you're stuck with either a bunch of the U's in that company building things for them, which has fraught with its own issues because you're trying to observe somebody else's job and then say, I'm going to go able to do that for you better than you can do that, by the way. And I'm going to generalize across 80 of you based on the observation of one of you. Like that doesn't typically work really well. And it's why, if you look at all the McKinsey reports coming out saying 95% of these projects are failing internally, it's because you don't have the people who are actually doing the work getting the things built for them. They are you have the people who are doing the work not actually building the thing, somebody else is building it for them. That's a big complication. And so when we look at behavioral agentic automation, now remember who we serve. We don't serve the power users like yourself, myself, or others. We serve the average user, the normal user, the everyday person. So how do you develop agentic work for them, agents that are doing things for them that make their lives easier? Well, like we just mentioned, it starts with observability. I need to be able to understand how they're operating. Well, the cool thing is if 90% of your workforce is leveraging something like Liminal that has observability built in, we have the capability then to say, hey, I actually, through logs, understand everything you're trying to do with AI. I know what you're trying to get it to do. I know how you're trying to get it to do it. I know the data sources you're querying with any sense of regularity, and I can assign a value equation to that particular outcome, which is really freaking cool, by the way. Right away, just on the surface, I can learn from how you work, and I can build something for that. But forget that for a second. Why would I do it when you have tools that are capable of building it for you now? So what behavioral agentic automation means is Liminal is able to watch how you use AI to accomplish your day-to-day job, look for repetitive patterns, look for high-value workflows, and then say, hey, I've watched you try this thing twice now. You're an accountant and you do a variance analysis once a month. Hey, last month I watched you do this. You tapped into these 5 different data sources to accomplish that variance analysis. And I'm going to just do that for you on the 15th of every month because it seems like you do this on the 15th of every month. And I can see from your calendar, by the way, that you have a reminder to do this on the 15th of every month. Would you like me to do that for you on the 15th of every month? And yeah, I absolutely would like you to do that for me on the 15th of every month. That person's not going to go set up that workflow chain ever. Maybe not ever, but certainly not in the next decade.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be expected to. Like, that's not their core skill set. So How can I serve that person? Now you're going to look at that and be like, dude, I could write that in 15 minutes using Claude. And you're like, you're goddamn right you can. But you're not everybody, right? You're a developer turned incredible marketer. I'm an idiot turned developer. This
It's
is
AI. It's AI security for normies.
That's it. It's AI for normies that's secure. How about that?
There you go. Even better. Better.
I think that's important because look, normies outnumber all of us by like 10 to 1. So be ready for that. And so we want to serve that populace really well. We know that, and it's so funny. I talk to customers all the time. Like I run an AI platform that I can engage with multiple models to do things. I use Claude 90% of the time. That's because I'm a power user and I pay for that right. By the way, I pay $250 a month for that right. That's a lot of money, by the way. Yeah. Now, my sales force, my marketing team, my finance team, they use Liminal almost exclusively.
Yep.
Right? Because they can accomplish what they need. So
no, it makes perfect sense. Love it. So let me ask you this, Stephen. So I know you're pressed for time. I'm pressed for time, and we're at our usual podcast length. Like we have always said, we like to keep this like the length of a walking a dog or going for a workout or doing something like that. So let me ask you this: like, what is kind of the big thing that you think is next, just in the industry in general? Like just a crystal ball kind of question to end us out with. Where do you think the industry is going from here, man?
Oh man, it's so boring what I'm about to say.
Go ahead. Do it.
Gosh, dude. All right. So models are going to continue to get better, and the engineer's job is going to turn from engineer to architect. If you're not capable architect, you should be, and you should be figuring that out very quickly here. But because like the actual code part of your job is going away, and people might roll their eyes at that, but I got to tell you, dude, I witnessed this day in, day out. I'm doing it myself. Like the code part of your job is going to go away. And I heard who was it? Who's our Lord and Savior at NVIDIA? What's his name again?
Mr. Jensen.
Yes, Mr. Jensen himself, I believe, was the one who said that engineers are problem solvers. And my goal is to turn engineers into problem solvers and let them problem solve across the organization. I actually really love that. Like, I think that is the notion. Architects are by nature problem solvers. They're figuring out what the problem is and they're architecting a solution. That's what they do. Engineers are trying. So maybe that doesn't sound like super interesting, but dude, that's a huge impact across anybody who leverages engineers, which is virtually about everybody. I also think that agents are going to become part of the normie stack. I don't think you get there outside of a behavioral agentic automation platform like a Liminal or something else out there. Security is going to continue to take top of mind, but here's like the really boring part of my answer. We're still really early. Like, and everybody's going to go like, no way, you're not early at all, because everyone on this that listens to this podcast, I'm sure, is like super advanced. But I got to tell you, someone who deals with mid-market regulated companies every single day, I talk to 20 of them a week. I run a dozen trainings a week. We are very early in the adoption cycle. Like day one, like we're still if we equate it to the cloud adoption cycle, we are still watching the shadow AI or shadow cloud teams swipe the credit card and piss off the CIOs because they're doing a bunch of work in the cloud. We're there. That's where we are. That's catching fire now, and it's talked about at conferences. And now people are wondering, well, what's coming next after EC2? Well, it's kind of like that right now. We're at the beginning of that phase, so it's still so early. And I know that's a boring answer, everybody, and that this is but I got to tell you, we're probably 5 years from this being like mainstream in every company. And like that everybody's at the way that everyone on this lister group is thinking about it. So
no, I love it. I agree. Well, hey, one last quick question. If folks are interested, where can they go for more?
Yeah, look, reach out to us. sales@liminal.ai is a great place to start. Or you guys, Stephen at liminal.ai. I will answer your email to the very best of my ability. Would love to talk to you. And we're hiring for director of product. So if you're listening and you're out there, definitely reach out to me, Stephen at liminal.ai. And thanks for giving me the chance to shout our company, by the way. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. For everyone out there, thanks for listening this week. And we will talk to everyone next week.
Thanks for listening. Check us out at theenterpriseaishow.com for past shows, newsletters, and all things enterprise AI.